Now we're going to get into a little theoretical stuff here, and I want your feedback here. Don't just sit there like bumps on a log, whatever. What is money? What is money? I gave you some of the answers there. What is money?
Medium of exchange.
Okay. Okay. Any other definitions?
Portable representation of wealth.
Okay. Very good. I like that one a lot.
It's supposed to be a store of value.
Very good. Some people call it a store of labor because after all you have to apply labor to an object to give it value.
Oh, yeah.
Portable representation. Yeah.
No, you're talking about modern money. I'm talking about the historic definition of the town. That's a good modern definition, yeah. But, you know, these are all good answers. And why is money necessary to a modern economy anyway?
It's a way to exchange services.
Very good. Now, if I remember right, Tom here's a dentist, correct? How many sacks of potatoes do you want to take from me in exchange for the filling of my tooth? Pardon?
A couple chickens.
A couple chickens, okay. So anyway, the point is, without money, you have to find a mutual need. You know, if I build houses, I need to find somebody who wants to buy a house in order for me to, what am I going to get? A lifetime supply of dentistry from Tom if I build him a house. Very messy in the exchange. So in a modern industrial economy, you need money to be the intermediary. It's a means of indirect exchange is another definition of it. Okay, anybody have any idea what some of the historical forms of money were? I'm just going to rattle these off in the interest of times. Puka shells and cowrie shells in the Southeast Islands, tobacco, cigarettes, horses, beavers, fish, salt, sugar, and cattle in different societies and at different times. All have served as money. What are the problems with some of those things? Pardon?
They're not around all the time. They're not around all the time.
Okay, there's one problem. You know, the problem with the puka shells, I'll tip you off there, that worked pretty good in the South Seas Island until somebody went to the other side of the island and found an infinite supply of puka shells and kind of blew the market there. So you had a very rapid transfer of wealth from those who thought puka shells were still valuable to those who had this infinite supply. And that's kind of what goes on in the marketplace with the modern fiat currency, which hopefully I'll explain at length later. But tobacco, for example, you know, is every hand of tobacco created equal? You know, even when they're freshly picked or cured or whatever, you know, some are superior to others, some might, you know, and if they get wet, boom, there goes virtually all the value right there. So these are, and again, you have to have somebody who has a need for cattle. You know, in a primitive society, virtually everybody's going to have a need for cattle or whatever, but hopefully some of the problems with these are pretty self-evident. Now, one thing I forgot to tell you at the front is we're deep into scratching the surface here, folks. There's no way that in a little over an hour I can give you all there is to know about money, but I'm hoping to arouse a little bit of curiosity, and I encourage you to study at depth some of the things we're talking about here tonight. Okay, what commodities over time have been the most widely used forms of money?
Precious metals.
Gold, silver, maybe platinum. Why? Why have precious metals been?
There's a certain amount of labor involved in attaining those.
Okay.
Their value.
Okay.
They're not worth anything else.
Pardon?
They're not really worth anything for anything else.
No, they can be used in multiple.
I don't know. Both gold and silver are excellent electronic conductors. There's nothing better than those two metals.
Yeah, that's recent.
Okay.
You don't really consume them. You can't burn them or eat them or anything like that.
Very good.
That's kind of the point I was making.
Very good. We got most of the list, but you know, basically, I made a little list here of things that make money valuable. You know, first it has intrinsic value in and of itself. Gold and silver fit the bill. Widely recognized, again, gold and silver. Not easily counterfeited. Portable, highly valuable per unit of weight, and divisible. You know, if you have a big chunk of gold, you can whittle it into a small chunk of gold, and it'll have proportionate value to its size. and it's not easily degraded. You know, gold and silver virtually don't corrode. The tarnish on the silver doesn't go very deep, and you can bring it back. Gold, for all intents and purposes, does not tarnish, does not deteriorate. This is one I had a problem with when I was studying, you know, because it's like, well, geez, nobody in this economy has seen gold for a couple generations, you know, what makes it valuable? But looking at it at the other hand here, you know, what makes these FRNs, Federal Reserve notes, valuable? Full faith and credit of the United States of America, which right now is on the wane. And Ben brought up a good point here. It takes a certain amount of labor to dig this out of the ground. How much labor does it take to print off another $1 zillion of Federal Reserve notes? A little bit, but you know, very inconsequential relative to the dollar amount that you're creating. And you know, this is significant, you know, because when you and I go to the marketplace and exchange goods and services, we have to create some wealth there some way or another. And that means that the money that we earn, that we present to the bank for deposit or whatever, represents a certain amount of labor. But how much labor goes into the banknotes, into the Federal Reserve notes that they can create out of thin air? Nothing. So this part of the problem. Okay, why is there a prohibition, Section 10, Article 5 in the Constitution, of making anything but gold and silver legal tender? In part, it has to do with the early history of the United States of America. You know, during the Revolutionary War, the Continental Congress printed all kinds of money called Continental dollars, and toward the end of the war and after, the saying went around, not worth a continental. And that was because they printed so many of them. There was a hyperinflation early in our history that not many people are aware of. And it's comparable to the hyperinflation that had happened in places like Weimar, Germany, Zimbabwe, and a couple times in France, when they got too profligate with their currency. Okay, what is counterfeiting? Basically, it's taking something and making it simulate money. What is inflation? Okay, that's close. What are you looking for?
Increase in the money supply.
Pardon?
Increase in the money supply.
That's the preferred answer. It's my preferred answer. You know, people use inflation a lot of different ways, but historically, what Rob said is true. Inflation is an increase in the pool of money. Now, is it possible under a gold standard to have inflation? Well, yeah. When the Spanish came over here and loaded their ships and took them back to Spain, they greatly increased the number of gold pieces in Europe and caused a continent-wide inflation. And it took several years to whittle that back down to where prices stabilized. But Mises points out that in spite of that inflation, it's infinitesimal compared to the amount of inflation that takes place in most of the Western world today. So, you know, plus we've discovered most of the gold that is easily gotten. So, you know, under a gold standard, the amount of currency is going to be considerably limited over the fiat standard or but okay, now back to inflation. Now, often, but not always, prices go up when there is inflation. If you think about the 1920s, the stock market went up, right? And land prices went up, but what else went up? During that same period, the industrial productivity greatly increased and the cost of most consumer goods stayed the same, but we still had the crash. And that was because of the misdirection of resources, which hopefully I'm going to get back to that.